Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Final Issue Blues here in the Worst Collection Ever podcast feed. I am your host, Sean. Final Issue Blues, a.k.a. FIB. I like a good acronym. Please excuse the any noise in the background you might hear. They're doing construction work right outside of my window. So we'll see if this gets filtered out at any point in the post-production process. But today, we're going to talk about a Marvel comic book in Final Issue Blues, one that nobody probably really was clamoring for, but I found it when I was looking for some books, and we'll talk about it because it's definitely indicative of a time in history for comics. At least that is something that is dear to me. But we're talking about Blaze number 12, July 1995. This is volume 1. Blaze, of course, is also known as Johnny Blaze, a.k.a. the original Ghost Rider. His series ran from August 1994 to July 1995. And just a little bit of background here about the character. He is the name most associated with Ghost Rider. I mean, there was also Danny Ketch, but I feel like obviously the movies established him as Johnny Blaze. Well, there was also Robbie Reyes, who was in the S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff. But anyways, a quick background. Johnny Blaze, first appearance, Marvel Spotlight number 5 from May 1972. Johnny Blaze is technically the second Ghost Rider. There was Lincoln Slade, who was a gunfighter that dressed up in all white and had a white hat and used fancy powder to make himself glow. So if you go to look up Ghost Rider, for the books that you want to, if you want to read like Ghost Rider number 1, volume 1, it's not going to be Johnny Blaze. It's going to be Lincoln Slade. Nonetheless, though, Johnny Blaze is the Ghost Rider that was originally bonded to the demon Zarathos, or Zarathos, I'll just say Zarathos, via Mephisto, because Johnny Blaze did not want his stepfather to pass away from cancer, so he was like, I will do anything to prevent that from happening, and he was tricked by Mephisto into not so much becoming the Ghost Rider, but a Ghost Rider. And then his father, or his stepfather, Crash Simpson, who was a motorcycle stunt rider, ended up dying anyways in a stunt. He's living a dangerous life, so that was kind of almost an inevitable situation. Not inevitable, I guess, if you're a stunt rider and things are, you're pretty good at it, everything will be okay. But there was there's plenty of stuntmen who things have not gone right for. That is definitely a life that Johnny Blaze was leading as well, because he was also a very infamous motorcycle stunt artist in the Marvel Universe. The thing I found interesting about Blaze, as I was doing a quick bit of research here, is that so he was succeeded by Danny Ketch as the Ghost Rider. But it turns out that Danny Ketch and Ghost Rider and Johnny Blaze are brothers, technically. Yes, they're brothers. They're straight up brothers. And his mother, she has some sort of curse going on, and she ended up leaving their family, and the father was left to take care of Johnny and his family, or just Johnny, because she took the kids. The other two kids, Danny Ketch and Barbara Ketch, and Johnny was left with his father, and his father passed away, and he was taken into the care of Crash Simpson, who was the head of the traveling carnival, the head carny of this all. So that ended up being the situation. Also, something I didn't know about Johnny Blaze is that so I've always heard the name Roxanne as his love interest. I did not realize that it was his stepsister. It's a very Brazzers situation going on here in the Ghost Rider universe. But yes, he did go on to marry her and have kids with her. So, but Johnny Blaze was again famous stunt rider, Guinness World Records and everything. He eventually ends up becoming Ghost Rider, as we detailed. He would team up with the champions, the Legions of Monsters. He fought this cat named Centurius, the soulless man, whose crystal of souls ends up bonding with Zarathos to free Johnny from being Ghost Rider. And then eventually Johnny buys the carnival that he used to be a part of and also marries his stepsister and has kids. That's how that portion ends. Then they start up Ghost Rider again. Danny Ketch becomes the new Ghost Rider. Johnny Blaze hears about it. He's like, oh, I better go check this out. Johnny Blaze brings a shotgun to this fight. And I didn't realize that Hellfire has the effect of like imbuing powers into like objects that it so chooses, because some of his shotgun got into the Hellfire and now he's got a Hellfire gun that shoots short bursts of Hellfire and becomes kind of Blaze's gimmick for a while. He's shooting off Hellfire and blasting up demons. But he does become Danny Ketch's mentor. Vengeance also shows up and is mad at him for some reason. And then something happens where I think the Medallion of Power was something that was originally on the bike, or was definitely on Danny Ketch's bike, but I think Blaze wore it on his belt, and it was forcibly extracted from him, and it hurt him pretty bad to the point that he had become like a metal shell, basically a cyborg, which kind of explains, to me at least, in the 90s Toy Biz figure series, there's Blaze 2 that is a cyborg. He has like a big, like mostly metal half of himself, kind of like a Deathlock or whatever. And his eye lights up and everything. But that makes sense as to why this happened. I wasn't reading the book at the time, so I had no idea what the hell exactly was going on. These days, he became an actor. He joined the Thunderbolts at some point. He went back into stunt riding, and then he became the King of Hell. I think that's where we're kind of at right now. At least this will bring us up to speed where we are in the book.
Do you like comics? The 1960s? How about middle-aged gay couples gossiping about their neighbors? Then you'll love Checkered Past,
a loving examination of DC's Go-Go Check branded comic magazines published from February 1966 to August 1967.
I'm Dr. Bob.
And I'm Dr. Husband.
And each week we'll be your hosts on a trippy tour through mid-century four-color madness. Checkered Past, available wherever fine podcasts are downloaded for free.
So let's get to the book itself. Blaze number 12 from July 1995. Right on the cover, it says final issue. So there are no designs that this will be a secret final issue of any sort. It's just, this book is over. You had a year to enjoy it, and now it's done. And then on the cover here, we have Blaze. He is smashing, who we come to find out is the undead motorcycle club member vampire Charnel. He is smashing him with his shotgun, or at least a part of it. And then behind him, there's this spirit, whatever. This guy's name is Uriel. When I first saw it, I thought it was Urkel, which I would have much preferred. But it's Uriel, and he is about to stab someone with a sword that has blue flame on it, which I would classify as soul fire or some sort of cold fire. I don't know. There's different kinds of fire in the Marvel Universe, but the story is called A Blaze of Glory, story by Larry Hama, art by Gary Erskine. I'll hopefully say his name correctly. And the story itself picks up with Blaze, one of Blaze's associates, Clara, who is a clairvoyant of some sort, or a psychic that is borrowing somebody's eyes, as she normally keeps in a jar. And also the Punisher is here. The Punisher, not on the cover, but the Punisher is here. And the Punisher, people were really harsh on the art, on the letter page, because I think Gary Erskine, he was the feller that took over the book as a part of a new team shift. And he's drawing, Frank Castle here. And Frank does not look great. I mean, he looks pretty thin. And his hair, to me at least, kind of looks like that episode of Seinfeld where they have low flow shower heads and they can't get all the soap out of the hair. So his hair kind of looks matted, or not matted, but just there's no volume to it because there's all the soap in it. They're all riding on motorcycles and they're facing off against the Undead Motorcycle Club, who are a group of North Jersey vampires. We are in North Jersey. So we're right on the cusp there of Philadelphia. We're in the tri-state area. Probably explains why Frank ended up here. I don't know exactly why he's here. I didn't read any of the previous issues, but he is there. And he may have heard about something going on, so here he is to either help Blaze out or just is drafted into the situation. There's one dude that is getting his head split. The way that it's drawn, I don't know if it's just because he's a zombie or he's a monster, but it doesn't look like viscera. It just looks like cyborg. It might be cyborg parts. I don't know. It doesn't look right to me. But he's getting his head split. He also has an 8-ball on his head. That kind of pops me. But Charnel and his crew are fiddling with some crate that they want Blaze to destroy with the Hellfire. Blaze is unaware of what he is. He's just there to confront Charnel. He doesn't know anything about what they're planning on doing with this crate. And Clara, who can sense all sorts of stuff, can notices like, oh, this box is pretty evil. So, Johnny, you should shoot it with your Hellfire gun. And he shoots it, and Uriel is unleashed. And I swear, when I looked at this thing, I thought it was Urkel. I thought we were getting Urkel. It was 1995, so kind of the last vestiges of the Urkel craze. Actually, I think he might have been done by that time on that show. But he might be here, wrapped up in. This is how a dude who is invisible, right? He's invisible except for one hand, one arm, one flesh arm, and the rest of him is wrapped in heavy chains. But the rest of it is his body's invisible, so you just see the chains, and the one arm is bare. And he's holding this. He's got this sword, and he also has like what appears to be a big padlock or something. I don't know what this box is that's on him, but it's just on him. So that is what Uriel is. He might be invincible, but and he kind of talks about it because the Punisher and Blaze are like, oh, I should take care of this guy. And this dude is just like, you can't defeat me. And Blaze just shoots him with his Hellfire gun, and that just does it. Like, at least puts him down. He's not dead, but he puts him down. Undead MC are like, hell yeah, this thing was keeping us from being even more vicious vampires, so now let's wreak more havoc. When out of nowhere, a fissure in the sky opens, and out pops Blaze's kids, Craig and Emma, some kid named Jesse Pinto. Still have no clue who this kid is, even though they act like it's a big deal. And fucking Wendigo, or a Wendigo, right? So there's a Wendigo, and they're riding the Wendigo out of this portal. I guess at some point earlier in the book, not this book, but in the series, there was something with an original storm god somehow must have ran afoul of Blaze or something, and he captured his kids, and the kids were being held captive, and they have released themselves, and now there's a Wendigo in the mix as well. It's a situation where the kids are like, stay away from my dad. The Wendigo starts beating everybody up. Because, there are other, in addition to Charnel, there's like a few other like vampire flunkies. Craig immediately shoves what is described as a nail file of some sort of blessed metal, and he shoves it into Charnel's face. This nail file apparently belongs to someone called Holden Blevins, who was some character from earlier in the book, dealing with some serial killer spirit named Icebox Bob. Also, apparently, this nail file has the number 7 engraved on it, which means that it allows you to have some sort of, it's a mystic number. So if you engrave number 7 on stuff, it'll produce malevolent energy. In some cases, I don't get it. But he shoves a nail file on his face. Charnel immediately is like, ow, that hurts. And then he gets stretchy. I didn't know this was a vampire thing, but he gets stretchy, and he starts throttling the kid. And in this whole process, the Wendigo just disappears. So now there's a Wendigo loose in New Jersey, possibly Philadelphia. I tried to find out what happened to because there's a main Wendigo character, but their Wendigos are just a race of these mystical monsters. So this could be any Wendigo. I don't know if it's the actual Wendigo that fought Wolverine back when his debut, wherever. It could be anybody, and now it is loose, and I assume the X-Files will need to track it down. So Mulder and Scully need to get on that. Charnel also gets real strong here, and he smashes Blaze and Punisher's guns. They have like shotguns that they're all using, obviously the Hellfire gun, and Charnel just smashes it with his hand. Just crushes it. And I'm like, so is that it for the Hellfire gun? Like, do you have to get a new one? Do you have to dip it in some Hellfire again, a new one, or can you replace this one? It's because it's just gone. He just crashes, just crunches it, and they're about to be offed, and Blaze, while fighting with Charnel, grabs Uriel's sword, which is still hanging out, and he starts hacking away, and Punisher says, like, go to town. He's cheering him on. Hellfire gets boosted. Oh, so so I think this has to do with the Hellfire in him, but Johnny gets like this super like buff and impales Charnel with the sword, and it talks about the unspeakable joy of his power, and he kills Charnel, and that's how that goes. So I feel like the rest of this crew has already been hacked up and all that stuff, and that's pretty much like the end of like the important part of the book, because this fight goes on, it just happens, and then the rest of it is just like Blaze reuniting with his kids, and then this is where we find out about Jesse Pinto, who I think he might be Native American, because something about he gets introduced when Blaze is hanging out with Warpath, and there's something over there. I don't know if he is the heir to the Pinto beans fortune. Is there a fortune for the person that created the Pinto bean, or was that just a thing? I mean, I'm sure it was probably created, and named well before patents were even a thing. But anyways, Jesse Pinto, this kid has the worst haircut. Like Frank's got bad hair. Punisher has bad hair in this book, but this kid looks like a jet black Guy Gardner, but the hair, it just looks like literally a helmet. He kind of reminds me of back in Buffalo. There was a woman, newscaster woman. She was, I think she was she would do newscasting stuff, but she was mostly a meteorologist. Her name was Linda Pellegrino. And I always remember because she had hair kind of like this. It was the 90s, so that was partly a fashion at the time for men and women. Mostly women, but this kid decided to take it on. And we used to call her Helmet Head. We used to imagine that she had a hard head full of hair. And this kid, the way this kid's hair is, it's drawn very glossy, so it just looks like it's some sort of helmet. Because I don't understand why this kid's important, what he does. I mean, he just happened to be around when those kids got grabbed, and now he is in the midst of this fight. Maybe he was able to help contact the Wendigo and be like, hey, Wendigo is kind of a friend of mine, me being the heir to the Pinto bean fortune, and Wendigos love Pinto beans, so he owes me a favor. And he called the Wendigo up, and but the Wendigo got loose, and he's just not there anymore. But now Blaze is like, all right, well, and Blaze is like, I'm excited to meet you, and again, no clue what this kid did. Not even like a hint of like, oh man, I've heard about you. You did X, or you knew X, or this, whatever. He's just some kid, like literally right before they start talking to him, he's like chewing his finger like a little like turd. And then Blaze is like, you must be Jesse Pinto. Oh my God. Can I have your autograph? The Pinto bean. It's my favorite. Yeah, but he gets, I guess he's going to live with them. It's kind of like the end of Goonies where like Chunk is like, Sloth, you can live with us now. It's like, all right, I guess you're just adopting this kid. And I don't think anything happens with Jesse Pinto after this. We don't hear about him. He just kind of just continues living with Blaze, I guess. Uriel is still there. Somehow is still alive. I guess the Hellfire wasn't enough to put him down for good. And he's like, hey, Blade, I'm glad you used my sword. Can I have it back? And Blade's like, I say, damn it, Blade and Blaze is too hard for me to get. I probably said Blade a bunch of times already. Blaze is like, sure, you can have this back. And he's like, all right, I'll see you later. And I don't even know what happens to this one either. So now you got a Wendigo loose. You have a invisible man wrapped in chains with one flesh arm and a sword hanging out. And you got Jesse Pinto. This is the last book of the series. Why should I care about any of this? I care about it because I'm reading it and I wanted to talk about it, but it doesn't make me want to go back and read anything else about it. It seems like a lot of nonsense. All of a sudden, Blaze, of course, so I guess some of the deal of this book is that Blaze hangs out. He bought the carnival that he grew up with, and he just kind of runs things. And now his carnival buddies show up. I guess one of them is a Princess Python, who, if I recall, may have been part of the Serpent Society at one point, or she was a part of the Ringmaster's Circus of Crime. But she's there. And then there's some Asian girl named Madame Yang Kui. There's a blonde guy holding a jar with a demon inside named Shalab, or as I would like to say, Shaloob. So Monk is in this jar, and also too, turns out that you don't realize. I don't know how I don't realize this initially, but blonde guy just has crab hands. So we're talking like some weird basket case shit where you just got some real deformities, like not gimmicky stuff, but like actual people just like, man, I got crab hands. I guess I'll be in the circus. And this dude's just holding this jar with this demon in it. And there's also a guy named Cody with a K. He looks like Sabretooth. That's all I know about him. And then there's a green shirt dude and a hairy guy. And kind of looks like Dr. Psycho from the Harley Quinn cartoon. And then all of a sudden, and I could have sworn this whole book, and I had to go back, I was reading it, and I was like, I tried to figure out the point where this happens, but when we first introduced to Clara, who's on the back of Blaze's motorcycle, he's not wearing, she has eyes. And then all of a sudden, she just has another jar where she puts these eyes in, and she just doesn't have eyes. And she's like, all right, here, Blaze, you take these eyes. These are from the Crystal Gazer. There's a lot of evil or stuff that I don't really want to be involved with here. So I guess you should have them. And that's it for Clara. And then she just walks away. I mean, you don't have any eyes. I know you sensed some danger and all that stuff, but like now you're just blind, and you could have kept the eyes, or you could have went with the crew. They could have helped you out. I don't know. These characters, it is just a mess, and I feel bad for myself for reading this and not appreciating the randomness more of this, but at the same time, it is that kind of randomness that just makes you angry. Anyways, Punisher is like, all right, I'm going to leave. But let me tell you, this is a happy ending, but not everybody gets to have a happy ending. So you better appreciate this, because you have to be reminded by the Punisher that his family was murdered, and Blaze, his family, I don't know if his wife's there. I don't think Roxanne's there, but his kids are there, and his carnival family's there. And they're just all sitting there amongst the cherry blossoms and being very, very happy that the vampires are dead, and they're all together. And Punisher's like, all right, I'm going to go and try to get the soap out of my hair. And that's how the book ends. That is the last panel. It is the Punisher. You have Blaze standing here with his family. Actually, I think Clara's still here, and she's holding. I thought she walked away, because the way she kind of walked away, it looks like she's just leaving. But no, she's still here, I guess. It's Blaze and the kids, and everything seems to be okay. And Dr. Psycho is holding this shotgun. And then you have Princess Python, who doesn't have any lines, but she's there, like, off to like the side, not hanging out with anybody. She's holding her hand. It looks like she's looking at her phone, but it's 1995, so nobody has phones. It's a weird panel. It's a weird panel for reasons like they didn't know what to do with these characters. Instead of just maybe showing Blaze's face and have him looking off or something like that, we have this awkward panel of all these characters just standing there. And that's how this series ends. Blaze number 12 from July 1995. There's a letters page in here. It kind of ties in to the part here where we talk about why this book was canceled. It straight up tells you, the letters page, by the way, is called Writing Shotgun, which I think is clever, but also terrible. But the cancellation has strictly to do with low sales. And this is, summer 95. So there's actually a lot of books that are being canceled via Marvel, because I think there's definitely some shakeups coming here. We're getting out of the whole, and I alluded to talking about this earlier, but Blaze was a part of the Midnight Suns. In the early part of the decade, everybody tried to sort of like get into that, try to, kind of be associated with that momentum. So they brought back a bunch of his characters. So obviously Blaze shows up, and then you got Blade and the Night Stalkers. They're there. They throw Doctor Strange into the mix. Morbius gets his own series. And around this time, this is like 92. This is 92 when this is all happening. That momentum has definitely waned. And now we're canceling a bunch of these books. We started a bunch, tried to see how they would go. Blaze and Blade were definitely like a late addition for these in that sort of Midnight Suns oeuvre of books. Given the fact that this book and Blade only lasted barely a year, that kind of shows that the momentum was going in a different direction. And Marvel, I think, decided to go. This is when they're changing over to Marvel Edge and also Marvel Knights. They're really putting the books, the ongoing series into different categories so that it's easier for people to like follow stuff, I guess. Don't have to feel overwhelmed or whatever. I don't know. I assume that's what it has to do with, because usually that's why they do these sort of things. But that's the main reason why they're canceling these books, because I think there's definitely a sea change going on. And this is something I've never really seen, at least, in 1995 in the letters page, since it's the last book, they're just like, whatever, people are like, oh man, I think the news already came out prior to when people were talking about issues prior, like issues 9 or 10 or 8 or whatever. They already knew the book was being canceled. And they're talking about their disappointment in the art, but, maybe they should, maybe things they can improve on or whatever. And the response is just kind of like, hey, we're canceled. Doesn't matter now. And one of the responses details that the sales were sinking like the Titanic to $12K a month. $12K to me, 12,000 is a big number. But when you put that into a perspective of like other comics that are being produced in mass and what some of those other books bring in every month, like an X-Men book or whatever, that probably brings in like 10 times as much of what Blaze does. Or maybe, who knows, maybe even less. I don't know. Financially, this is a weird time for Marvel. They obviously have to make some sacrifices, and a book that only brings in 12,000, people are only 12,000 readers isn't going to be worth their time. So unfortunately, Blaze has to go, and Jesse Pinto has to go, and Uriel has to go, and we will see them down the road. The last thing I want to cover before we wrap this up here is, so we're in the graveyard when we're fighting people here. There's a bunch of things written on the gravestones that I thought, because this is the last issue, I feel like this is something that they're like, you know what, let's get in as much of our shit as possible. And I'll read off a few things here. You have a bunch of bands listed, of course. You have PJ Harvey, My Bloody Valentine, Rollins Band, Sonic Youth, Massive Attack, Fishbone, Faith No More, Portishead. And then you have Hobo Humpin' Slobo Babe, which is not a band, but if you were watching Beavis and Butthead around this time, there was a video from a band with that song. The band was called Whale, and it had some girl wearing braces, and I think it's Australian or something like that. It's a real wild video. And Beavis and Butthead really liked it. But you also have written on some headstones, you got Jetta Fine and Casey Williams. For the uninitiated, those are porn stars. I am not familiar with KC, but I've seen Jenna Fine do a few things, and she was kind of in that mix. Yeah, she was. I mean, she wasn't as big as your Jenna Jamesons, but she definitely stood out from what I can gather. I feel like she definitely has some cachet with the '90s crew. She also had Jesse Pinto hair, if you can imagine that. You also got Hannibal Lecter for some reason. Julie Delpy, the actress. She's a French actress. She was in those Before Sunset, Before Midnight. Those Richard Linklater movies that Ethan Hawke is in. I don't know if it was like Before Sunrise. And she was also in American Werewolf in London, or American Werewolf in Paris. So how about that? Killing Zoe. That was a French movie, or I don't know if it's a French movie, but it's like a crime movie with Gary. Why am I blanking on his name? Gary Oldman. Jesus Christ. Gary Oldman's in it. And also it had some brief scenes, speaking of porn, with Ron Jeremy as a bank teller who gets shot. Like, that's literally all that happens. He just shows up and gets shot. Also something called Intron Depot, which from what I was able to gather was a anime collection or offering from the creator of Ghost in a Shell. There's also something for Scroll TV, which to my knowledge was never an actual show. And then the last one I wanted to cover was, I'm not going to butcher this name, Marie-Jean van der Vloot, who was the daughter of a famous Dutch actor. And she was also a musician. Her band was called Salad, which is also written on one of these tombstones. And I guess she's also best well known as one of the VJs for MTV Europe, specifically 120 Minutes. A lot of cool things, though, that obviously show the musical tastes or just interests of the creative team of Blaze Volume 1. What happened next? Well, Blaze would go on to feature in some Ghost Rider stories, of course, under the Marvel Edge banner around 1996. Punisher, his books were canceled, I believe, in the same month. Yeah, because actually, if I'm recalling, because in the back here you get the hype box. Yeah, Punisher R.I.P. The Punisher titles end their run this month with Punisher Warzone 41, Punisher 104, and Punisher War Journal number 80. With the Cataclysmic Countdown storyline. Hopefully we'll get a chance to track those down too. I have a feeling those are probably hard to find because Punisher is a very popular character. And I'm assuming that they're just canceling them because they want to reboot just the Marvel stuff in general, where he would fit in. So the Marvel Knights, I think he's a part of that when they boost that, when they start that again, or they start that up. And they didn't want to just start with issues with all of his books happening. I don't know why you just couldn't keep the main ongoing and just have that going for a while. Do you need a Punisher Warzone or a War Journal? I don't even know what the War Journal makes sense. Warzone, I don't know exactly what the difference was between that and just a regular Punisher. I'm not a very well-versed in Punisher. I'm sure I can find out more about it. So for the creative team, Larry Hama, of course, known for his work on G.I. Joe and also with Wolverine. He would go back to the Wolverine ongoing and keep working on that, as well as doing some Venom miniseries over the next couple of months or years or whatever, because we love doing Venom miniseries back in the 90s. We could not get enough of that. As well as the new Conan book. I think all the Conan books also went away, and they rebooted Conan just as Conan, and Larry was behind that. And Gary Erskine, best known for his work on Marvel UK's Knights of Pendragon, would move on to do some work for Malibu Comics, which Marvel did also own or took over on this time. Particularly Codename Firearm. And he also worked on 2099 Unlimited, and eventually moved on to do future projects with Garth Ennis over in Vertigo, some Warren Ellis stuff, also Star Wars for Dark Horse, and a whole mess of other IPs. He's definitely kept himself busy, and I'm sure he's doing quite well. And then the rating. Let's put this to bed here. So the rate. I haven't exactly figured out how to do the rating. This book was a bunch of nonsense. It's one of those things where you might be interested in by looking at the cover, because the cover's not bad. You got Blaze. It says final issue on it, so you know it's over with. But you're like, okay, so what's going on here? Blaze is hitting the vampire, and then you got a guy in chains and a sword. It's crazy. It looks wild. You have the Punisher there, barely doing anything except having lame hair, and then the rest of it is him, Blaze, reuniting with kids, and that's how it goes. And you're just like, well, I don't know. This was not. This was an ending, but I could care less about all these folks in here. And I think that Marvel also did as well, because a lot of them just don't go on to do anything else. I mean, Blaze obviously has kept himself busy, and Punisher has, but everybody else is just in limbo of some sort. I have no idea exactly why Punisher is there. Again, mentioning from the previous issues, I'm sure there's a good reason. But I also feel like it was probably a thing where they're like, you know what, let's get him into as many books or try to figure out stuff for him, because his books are being canceled. So we'll see if we can get him involved with some storylines, or I don't know, whatever. Surprisingly, he's not on the cover. He should be on the cover if you want to sell issues, but it's the last issue, so people are not going to be guaranteed to want. You don't know if anybody's going to buy it, because they're not going to want to pick up a final issue of a book that they never really cared about in the first place. But if Punisher's not, but maybe even if the Punisher is there or not, but if he was doing something cool, like if he was like fighting the Invisible Guy and Blaze was like featured but not really featured, you could probably get away with that. And there's a few references to previous issues in that, like the Icebox Bob stuff and whatever. And I don't know, it's interesting, but it's not. I'm not going to go out and look this up. I think if I recall the first issue when it came out, this was like in the height of shiny covers for comic books. And I remember that one being pretty cool, the pretty cool cover. And I might pick that up just for the hell of it. I think I might have had it when I was younger. I vaguely remember that, because I remember it being on the stands, but I don't remember buying it. But maybe I did have it. I just feel like I had it, because it was the 90s, and things that were shiny would attract us on the comic book stands. But that will do it for this edition of Final Issue Blues. Not much else more you could say about Blaze, issue number 12 from July 1995, other than it was a book that ended. And maybe we'll read something that has a bit more impact next time. But thanks for listening, everybody. Find us on our socials at Angry Hero Sean and at Jen Stansfield. And check out the podcast on YouTube at Worst Collection Ever. Email us at worstcollectionever@gmail.com. And rate and review the podcast anywhere you get it. It will be greatly appreciated. And we'll talk to you again next time.